Could you be connected to some big event in history? Are you related to someone famous, or better yet, infamous? Everyone wants to find their place in history, and now you can. I'm Emmett Miller, and your search starts right now. Thousands of people visit the Belmont Mansion every year to learn about its place in Nashville's history. Today, visitors are flocking to this historical landmark for another reason, to see if they can get answers to some of their burning questions involving their own family history.
My great-great-great-grandfather was the first person in Tennessee to discover coal.
And in a few cases, family mysteries. Today, PBS viewers just like you have submitted their question to us in hopes of solving family mysteries or finding a connection to famous people or events in history. The reaction has been amazing.
That is great, bravo!
To get the job done, we've enlisted the talents of our very own team of genealogical experts.
My name's Kenyatta Berry. I am the president of the Association of Professional Genealogists. I specialize in African-American ancestry, specifically slave genealogy.
My name is Joshua Taylor. I'm the president of the Federation of Genealogical Societies. I'm part detective, part historian, and the other part just extremely curious.
A major political cover-up and scandal are key ingredients for most suspense novels. But for our first guest, it's this truth and nothing but that she seeks from her family's past.
My name is Margarita Page, and I was born in Tennessee. I'm interested in my family genealogy and history because I really want to solve this family mystery. But the mystery that I'm trying to solve is whether or not there was white people in our family history. As the story goes in the family, my great-grandfather, or his cousin Albert, was half white, and one of the governors of Tennessee was somehow involved. This was something that was always sort of discussed under the breath. On occasion, if there was a family gathering, or if we were driving in the car and the conversation happened to drift to this whole situation. I mean, we never sat down and discussed the genealogy of it, but it was always a fact that this had occurred, and every now and then it would come up. I really want to solve this family mystery and tell the story because I think that it's important for people to understand that it doesn't have to be hidden. Maybe explained gently, but not hidden.
Margarita, welcome to the Genealogy Roadshow.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So, you have come to us wanting to know about a family story.
Yes. Growing up, I heard a story that we were somehow related to one of the governors of Tennessee.
So, let's dive in to the line a little bit. And I actually am going to focus on a man whose name was Albert Roberts, who is your relative.
Right.
Now, Albert was born in 1890, and he is born to a woman named Mary. Mary is a single mother, and she's working in the household of a white family. Now, what we learned is that by 1910, Albert's grandfather, Henry Roberts, had passed away.
Okay.
And Albert had inherited his funeral home business. And Albert is owning the funeral home business in his sort of early teen years.
Amazing.
Now, we can find in the 1920 census, there's Albert Roberts, his wife Jeannie, daughter Bertie.
Yep.
And this tells us that Albert was involved in the taxi business. Now, we know from records that Albert had no more than an 8th grade education. He likely was illiterate. Don't be worried about him, though. He did quite well for himself. He wasn't just involved in that taxi cab company. He owned the taxi cab company.
Yeah, yeah.
He owned a nightclub, and he owned a cemetery.
Oh my goodness.
So, I mean, he had death sort of all wrapped up. Funeral home, cemetery, Albert had it all covered.
Yeah, yeah.
He's also involved in some less than legal activity.
Yeah, I heard about some of them.
You heard about that? So during Prohibition, he was involved in rum running.
Yeah, I heard that story.
And he was involved in some prostitution. We hadn't heard that, had we?
No, I hadn't heard that. They kept that one quiet, I guess.
Now, Albert, during his entire life, you can imagine being a business owner and also sort of a less than legal business owner in some circumstances, you might get in trouble with the law. And miraculously, your relative, Albert Roberts, made it through every single legal skirmish that he got into through the help of a white attorney named Collier Goodlett. Now, Collier was one of the best attorneys that money could buy at that period. Now, Collier Goodlett is the protege of Governor Austin Peay.
Okay, okay.
He was the one who Austin Peay sort of helped teach the law to, and he was actually the law partner of Governor Austin Peay.
That's even more interesting, isn't it?
It really is, because there had to have been some hand in Austin Peay and Collier Goodlett and what they're doing to help out your relative.
Right.
Right? There's something going on.
The reason, yeah.
So we have a family story, and the legend, as you've said, has continued, down to the current day. And there's always some grain of truth.
Right.
So we came up with one potential theory, and that is that Austin Peay might have been the father of your relative, Albert Roberts.
Right, yes.
But there is a problem with that,
Okay.
and that is that at the time of Albert's birth, Austin Peay was a 14-year-old white boy. So we start to build a case. Here's what we know. Albert Roberts was born in 1890 to Mary Roberts, a 28-year-old black housekeeper.
Right, yeah.
We know she was working in a household. We don't exactly know whose household, but we know at that time that a 14-year-old boy, Austin Peay, was in the same area.
Okay.
And then there's the twist of Collier Goodlett. Why would the governor's sort of right-hand man, his protege, spend so much time and energy protecting your relative?
Okay.
So it was sort of a mystery until we uncovered a document that, I will tell you, I did a double take. This is the document. If I could pick a document to frame on my wall and look at, it would be this.
Oh, man.
In 1936, a letter was donated to the Montgomery County, Tennessee Archives.
Are you kidding me?
Would you like to read the letter?
Yes.
So the letter says, I didn't know until recently that Albert Roberts was former Governor Austin Peay's son. It must have been a bombshell when it exploded.
Oh, man. That is absolutely amazing.
So our theory is that Albert Roberts is actually the son of Governor Austin Peay. Now, the secret was definitely hidden. This is your family legend. And if the legend is true, we have a document that actually verifies it. So now everybody here in Nashville knows the secret.
That is, yeah.
So Albert Roberts is actually a cousin of your grandfather. So he is in your tree. So your family does have a connection to Austin Peay.
Okay.
Here's the connection.
That is great. Bravo.
Margarita Page. We have this 14-year-old Governor Peay with a 28-year-old house servant. Albert is born. In your mind, why do you think the governor's protecting him so much?
You know, I would naturally assume that he was protecting him because he was his son.
Okay.
There's a lot of pain involved. I mean, can you imagine your father not owning you or saying your father? That would be very painful.
Thank you so much for joining
you're
us. What a
welcome,
story. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. And for our next guest, it's one photo in particular that's got him wondering about his family's past.
My name's Edwin Kennedy, and I live in Tennessee with my wife, Renee. My family has been in the East Tennessee area for at least 3 generations. And there are some legs of my family who have been in the Knoxville area since the late 1700s. Not long after Renee and I got married, I was going through one of the books of family pictures with her. And that's when we found the picture of my grandfather's brother, Granville, sitting in the lap of this man. And we looked in the back of the picture, and the picture caption said, Granville with Uncle Fate. That picture caught our attention because, for one thing, here's the child of an affluent family sitting in the lap of a black man. And around 1905 in Tennessee, that was That was unusual. The other thing that was unusual is a lot of the pictures you see in sort of the post-Victorian area, people still tended to look very stern and very serious. And that picture had a warmth to it. The look on Granville's face and the look on Uncle Fate's face is a very affectionate, warm picture, and there had to be a story behind that. We know a lot about the members of the family, but I never heard anybody talk about Uncle Fate and who he was. It would be really interesting to find out what the connection between our family and his family is.
I absolutely love this photo. It's a beautiful photo that shows a relationship between two people. In my research, I found that there are photos of African-American women and children, and a lot of that was during slavery, but an African-American man, white child, very unusual.
Yeah.
Okay, the name Fate, it's kind of interesting.
I always wondered about that because it definitely seems to me that that's not a name that somebody gives you. That just sounds like a name you would choose for yourself.
So, right. So the first thing we did was go to the 1900 census. You can see Edwin Kennedy right there.
Okay.
And if you go down to a gentleman named Lafayette Cox, who's African American and listed as a servant in the household.
Okay.
So, Fate, it's actually a very common nickname for Lafayette.
Really?
So that led us to believe that this is Lafayette Cox, who was a servant in a household with Granville. Now, something else interesting about this. We found that this picture, as sweet as it is, touches not only you, but it also touches another family. I would like to actually introduce you to the second great-granddaughter of Lafayette Cox.
Really?
Yes.
Kidding
Bertie,
me.
please come out. So, Bertie, this is the first time you're seeing a photo of your great-great-great-grandfather, Lafayette Cox. Is that correct?
It is.
Well, I have to say, I see some family resemblance. How do you feel about the photo?
It's endearing, and I like that he's content, and the little boy is very happy to be with him.
I want to tell you guys a little bit more. Lafayette actually served in the 1st Colored Heavy Artillery, so he was part of the United States Colored Troops in the Civil War. There's actually an 1890 military census where Lafayette is self-reporting where he served as a private in 1864 and 1865. And Lafayette was actually a farmer in the 1870s. One of the great things that Lafayette did that really excites me is he was a property owner in 1891. Now, 1891, I mean, let's think about this time period. Here we have a man who might have been a slave, who served in the U.S. Colored Troops, and in 1891, he is owning property in Knoxville. So not only was he a farmer, but he was a landowner. We took a look in the 1906 City Directory. This is a section for anyone with the last name Cox. We can see that Lafayette works for E.M. Kennedy. So Edwin, I believe that's your namesake, correct?
Yeah, that's my great-grandfather.
Father, yeah. So here we can see that connection, not only from that photo, but also from the directory. And Bertie, what do you know about your father's side of the family?
Not much. He and my mother divorced when I was young, and she moved to Ohio, so.
Okay. In 1910 here, we see Hugh Cox living next door to Lafayette. And if you look, Bertie, that's your grandmother Bertie as a little girl. Right. And so you see her enumerated with her family. So your namesake as well, right there. One of the things I think is so important about this story is that Edwin could have just said, oh, I already know enough about my family, but he wanted to understand this person and their impact. And what you've given to Bertie is a connection to her history. You've provided to her a photo of your second great grandfather.
It's touching, and I'm grateful. I'm grateful that One, someone kept these pictures, and it meant that much. And then you chose to seek further, so it gave me new information, and more importantly, my daughter, more information about who she is.
It's interesting just to start off with a picture and then actually get some idea of who he was as a person. And it's clear that he was a remarkable person. And the fact that this has been able to give you something and your family something, I'm just so excited I just can't put it into words. I'm delighted, I really am.
What a story. That picture has such impact.
The affection in their eyes, the content, they're at peace.
Very warm, beautiful picture, just stood out.
You know, he had fought in the war, so he had fought against poor race relations, but yet he was able to develop a relationship with someone of a different race. So that says something a lot about the journey the man took.
We're talking to PBS viewers just like you, and they've all come here to find out what may be in their histories, and the results have been amazing.
I'm supposed to go back to Kaiserville now.
My family goes back to 1650 Rhode Island. Supposedly, they came from Bordeaux, France.
My grandmother used to sit in the front seat of a Model T. And I was like, what? That's crazy.
My grandmother was a fixed marriage with my grandfather, and they married her off at the ripe old age of 15.
Marquita Fletcher, welcome to Genealogy Roadshow.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So nice to have you. And I hear that there may be a connection between you and the Pointer Sisters?
Pointer Sisters,
Okay.
yeah.
Is that because you sing so well? Or what makes you...
No, that wouldn't be it. No. No.
And why else are you here?
George Boxley was an abolitionist that I'm wondering if I'm related to. In my research, that's what I'm finding. And on my father's side, the Fletcher family, my grandmother, we have very little information on her, so we're looking for some type of information.
All right, so let's start with George Boxley. You said he was an abolitionist, and you're wondering if you're related. Your research says that you think you might be.
Yes.
When we looked into it, we found that he actually went to the north afterwards to escape. From what we can tell, you're not related to him.
Okay.
Your Boxleys are a different family.
Okay.
Down one. All right. Now, let's talk about the Pointer Sisters.
Okay.
Now, the Pointer Sisters have ancestry from the South.
Okay.
They're in Tennessee and in Arkansas and Alabama, but they're not your family.
You're just striking out all in.
They are, you really are. But you're not out.
Okay.
You're not out.
Let's do it.
All right, let's talk about your great-grandmother, Maddie Lee Fletcher. Worked as a maid in the house of Andrew Burton.
Okay.
Now, Burton was a philanthropist. He was well known in Nashville. He owned an insurance company. And he actually gave financial support to an African-American preacher by the name of Marshall Keeble.
Okay.
So we all right with that news? We all right with that news?
Okay.
All right. And Burton is also the great-grandfather of recording artist Amy Grant. So there's some, no Pointer Sisters. You might have to change what you're listening to a little bit, but you know, so we did find that out for you.
Marquita, listen, your family was involved in helping out people who did great work in this community.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I say hats off to you.
Thank you.
Marquita Fletcher, thank you for being on Genealogy Roadshow. We move now from a family mystery to family history. Two individuals have come to the Roadshow in hopes of answering the same question.
The kids go to the Alamo, they say, oh, we're descendants of Davy Crockett, and they really want to know if it's true. Also, I'm interested in the daughters and the sons of the American Revolution Society.
I know there's some questions on Davy's line and his ancestors, which I'm hoping the genealogists today can prove to me that I am related.
All right, Michelle and David, I am so happy you're here.
We are too.
Very excited.
Very excited.
I heard that you dress up as Davy Crockett.
I sure do. I do reenactments twice a year.
So David, the first document we took a look at was this one.
There we go.
That's proof enough for me. Yeah. I mean, we can go home right now. We're done. There you go. So I have to say, as a genealogist, Davy Crockett is sort of on like the top 10 most wanted lists.
That's pretty cool.
All right, so you both clearly know who Davy Crockett was, but let's find out more about the man behind the legend.
We all know a little about the king of the wild frontier, Davy Crockett. A man of myth and legend, he's most often recognized for his coonskin cap and rifle. A native son of Tennessee, he was a woodsman, a huntsman, an adventurer, and in 1813 served as a scout and eventually lieutenant colonel during the American Indian Wars. Given Davy's adventurous life, it was all too easy to overlook his political career.
In 1826, Davy Crockett was elected to Congress. During that time, he definitely took advantage of the stories surrounding his frontiersman lifestyle. These wild stories helped him get reelected twice.
But Davy was disenchanted with political life when he was not elected to a fourth term.
Davy Crockett missed the adventurous life. In 1835, he decided to seek out the adventure in Texas. The last memory his daughter has of him is Davy leaving dressed up in his hunting outfit with his brand new rifle.
In Texas, he joined with the Volunteer Revolutionary Army, fighting with the Texans against Mexico for independence. And on March 6, 1836, Davy Crockett fell at the Battle of the Alamo, along with nearly 200 Texan soldiers.
So let's dive in, and Michelle, I'm gonna start with you.
Okay.
The line from your late husband goes back to a woman named Sarah Crockett, who married John Goodgame. Now, we can actually find more than one document that states that Davy Crockett was actually the brother of your late husband's ancestor, Sarah Crockett. Now, the confusion over who this Sarah Crockett is has been printed and printed for years and years. Now, do we believe everything we read?
No. That's why we're here.
That's exactly why we're here. When we go back to some of the research that folks have done on the Sarah Crockett Goodgame, we do not believe that Sarah Crockett was actually the sister of David. We also don't think that she's a second cousin. So this means that your Crockett line is likely not related to Davy Crockett. So the other question you had was about the DAR. And when we look at the tree, we trace the line back to a Charles Walker who married a Catherine Everett. What we were looking for is, are there any Everetts in the area? We found a man named Robert Everett. He did claim a pension for some military service. And Robert actually gave back his pension and stopped receiving it when he started having enough income from his business. So we should be proud to have Robert
in our line.
in your family tree. Now, as part of this pension application, he had to submit information about his family. And you notice his eldest daughter's name? It's Katie. So it's Catherine Everett. Remember, we're after Catherine, who marries the Walker. So your line goes back to this Robert Everett.
Wow, that's amazing.
Any guesses where this pension record comes from?
Not for me.
It's from the Revolutionary War records.
Oh, great.
So, Michelle, your children and grandchildren are eligible for membership in the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Thank you, thank you. That's exciting, thank you.
Big sigh of relief there?
Yes.
And David, your Crockett line comes to a man named Anthony Crockett.
Correct.
Who served in the Revolutionary War. So definitely certain that you're related to the Crockett surname. Now, looking at Davy Crockett's ancestry, Davy Crockett's father was John Crockett, and then that line goes back to a Joseph Lewis Crockett. So the question is, does Anthony Crockett fit into this line somewhere?
Right.
One of the theories about Anthony Crockett's family is that Anthony's father was Walter, Walter's father was James, and the father of James was Joseph Lewis Crockett, the same Joseph Lewis Crockett who appears in the ancestry of Davy Crockett. Anthony Crockett's ancestors definitely end up in the same place as Davy Crockett's ancestors. So there's a very high probability this is the right line, and you're related to Davy Crockett.
Excellent. That's what I was wanting to hear.
All right.
Yeah, I can go shoot old Betsy this afternoon.
I'm so glad you both came by to the Genealogy Roadshow today.
Thank you for having us, Josh.
You're welcome.
So the DAR, that's got to be a big thing.
Yes, it is. So my grandchildren are totally happy that they're eligible for scholarships now and that they do have a relation back to the American Revolution.
And David, your connection with Davy Crockett?
I've been telling everybody I know I'm related to him, but I just can't really prove it. But now I can tell everybody I am related.
I love it. I love it. Thanks for coming on Genealogy Roadshow.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity. It was great. Thank you.
Chris, welcome to Genealogy Roadshow.
Thank you.
So I see you have a guest here.
This is my lovely mother, Mantrika.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So why did you come to Genealogy Roadshow today?
So that I can have concrete evidence and be able to know for sure what I am, where I come from.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So with DNA, what we did is an admixture test. And that test looks at how much sub-Saharan African you have, how much Native American, East Asian, and how much European. Your ancestry, dun, 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 is predominantly of sub-Saharan and African origin, so about 84%.
Okay.
And you are 15% European, but 11% of that is Northern European.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is kind of cool. And you have a very, 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 very small percentage of Native American. So how does that make you feel now that you know that about yourself?
It gives me something concrete, and I can say it without having to say, well, this is a maybe.
It's a confirmation, and it's great to have this information for our family, to be able to tell it in a positive manner.
That's great. I'm excited for both of you, so thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you
for having us.
Appreciate it.
Our next guest hopes she's related to 4 famous names in history. Which, if any, will it be?
I came to beautiful Belmont Mansion in Nashville, Tennessee today to find out some long-standing questions that I've had about my family and genealogy. The first is whether I'm descended from President George Washington. The second is whether I'm related to the singing Carters or President Jimmy Carter. And the third is whether I'm related, as I've been told all my life, to the famous outlaw Jesse James.
Hi, Jean.
Well, hello. How are you today?
I'm good. So let's get started with George Washington. Tell me a little bit about how you believe you're related to him.
I have an ancestor on my mother's side that I was told was descended from George Washington's mother's side of the family.
I believe the connection through your family is Humphrey Pope. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Humphrey Pope is an interesting character because everyone believes that he is related to Nathaniel Pope, right? Who was directly connected to George Washington.
Right.
Well, actually, that connection doesn't exist.
Oh,
They are
really?
not related.
Oh gosh,
Yes.
everybody's sad to hear that.
Yes, but we still have 3 other people to look
Yeah.
at. Next up, we have the Carters. You believe you're related to the singing Carter family?
I just don't know. Living in Nashville, that's the first thing everybody wants to know.
Well, we are in Music City, so with the singing Carter family, can you sing as well?
I can carry a tune.
Oh, well, of course, we have to hear it.
I
We
don't have
to
much
hear it.
range.
You just belt out anything that comes to mind.
Will the circle be unbroken? My, oh, my, Lord, my, oh, my. Anybody? No, I have. Do I have participants?
That was good. I like
Well,
that.
thank
I
you.
like that. Now, Carter is actually the 40th most popular surname. So
Oh, yeah.
if there is a connection that exists, it may be distant and something that's back in England, but we're not able to tie your Carters directly to President Carter and the singing Carter family. So last but not least is this young gentleman here, Jesse James.
The outlaw Jesse James.
Yes.
I've been told that one of my great-great-grandmothers, 2 or 3 generations back, was his aunt through his mother's line.
Well, so far, we struck out on 3 out of your 4 claims. And before moving on to Jesse James, let's find out what kind of fella he was.
All right.
Jesse James is as notorious in death as he was alive. One of America's most infamous outlaws, he spent his life as a wanted man. From 1876 to 1881, he lived in Nashville, Tennessee, hiding out in this seemingly quiet house on Fatherland Street.
Jesse James was born in Missouri in 1847, but as a teenager in 1863, he had become a Confederate guerrilla, and he joined Quantrill's Raiders. They raided the city of Lawrence, Kansas, and killed over 100 unarmed men and boys. As a result of that, he sort of got lawlessness in his blood.
By about 1870, the James Gang was one of the most notorious gangs in American history. They robbed trains, they robbed stagecoaches and banks. They developed notoriety by leaving notes behind claiming credit for their exploits. From about 1868 to 1880, it's estimated that the James Gang stole about $200,000, which in today's currency would be millions of dollars. In 1876, they robbed the Northfield, Minnesota Bank.
That was a really bad move. 2 of their gang members were killed, and the younger brothers, all 3 of them, were severely wounded and captured. They fled to Nashville and hid out here from 1876 to 1881. In 1881, a large bounty was placed on his head, and one of the gang members decided that he wanted to collect the bounty, so he got up behind Jesse and shot him in the head.
And that single gunshot was the end of Jesse James and his band of outlaws.
Oh, God.
Wow, that's heavy stuff. So, walking you through your tree, you can see Arthur Earl Carter was your grandfather.
Yeah.
And then Charles was your great-grandfather. And then you see through your great-grandmother, Esther Vestey King, right, the connection to Stephen Thomas King.
Right.
And then we have Benjamin King and Nancy Poor. Now, we know that Mary Poor is Jesse James's grandmother.
Yeah.
The first thing we did was take a look at the area, right, where we know that Nancy and or Mary might have been from. And looking in that area, we find a gentleman by the name of Robert Poor, okay? Now, Robert Poor grew up in Goochland, Virginia, which is the same place as Mary and Nancy Poor. Now, during the middle of the American Revolution, Robert Poor was just a teen, 13 years old.
Really?
So he really couldn't go in as an officer. So he went in as a cornet player.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. And he was eventually listed as an officer.
Wow.
That's one piece of it, right? So then we take a look again, linking Robert to Mary and Robert to Nancy as his daughters. They were definitely sisters.
Oh, wow.
That means that you actually are related to the outlaw, Jesse James.
All right.
So there you go.
All right.
So now you can tell this story at parties.
Yeah.
What I think is very interesting about that is how notorious he was and all of the men he killed. He's actually related to someone who fought in the American Revolution and joined at such a young age.
That's really interesting. Thank you. That's a lot of information I didn't know.
Thank you so much for coming.
Well, I enjoyed it very much.
Well, Gene Carter, what a day.
I'll tell you.
I've been fantastic.
Yeah. I think it's really fascinating. I mean, how many people can stand here and say that they're directly related to someone who's such an important part of history?
Gene Carter, thank you very much.
Thank you very
It
much.
was wonderful.
Yeah, it was really fun. I had a great time.
Good.
While our guests settle in and find out more details about their history, it only seems fitting to share more information on this historical venue, the beautiful Belmont Mansion. The Belmont Mansion is a stunning reminder of the antebellum South and its proprietor, Adelicia Auckland. Her beauty and adversity is reflected in its creation. Adelicia was an independent woman years before it was socially acceptable. When her first husband, Isaac Franklin, died, she was left a very large fortune of approximately $1 million. That translates to $800 million today, which made Adelicia one of the wealthiest women in the world. A savvy businesswoman, she assured her own financial independence by getting her second and third husbands to sign what were probably history's first prenuptial agreements. This guaranteed that her properties would remain under her control. The Belmont was Adelicia's special project. Everything from the grounds to the house itself is representative of Adelicia, including the 200-foot-long greenhouse, an art gallery, a bowling alley, Nashville's first public zoo, and massive, elaborate circular gardens. In 1859, Adelicia enlarged and remodeled the mansion, creating the Grand Salon, the very site where we're shooting today. With the new addition, the mansion grew to 36 rooms and 10,000 square feet of living space on 180 acres of land. Adelicia's masterpiece also played a part in the Civil War. During the Battle of Nashville, it served as Union General Thomas J. Wood's headquarters. 13,000 Union troops occupied the grounds for 2 weeks before and after the battle. Thankfully, the mansion wasn't damaged. In 1887, Adelicia sold the Belmont Mansion. She died later that year of pneumonia. In 1972, the Belmont Mansion was placed on the National Register of Historic Places. Today, the mansion is set on the campus of Belmont University. It stands as a living legacy to one woman's vision of genteel Southern living.
Max, it is so good to meet you.
Good to meet you, Josh. This is my great-grandmother, Odelia Richardson. Her family originally came from South Carolina. We want to find out, are there any relatives still in South Carolina? Where in South Carolina were they? And who was their slave owner, and so forth.
Now, what we do know is that the woman who owned the family was a woman named Sarah Henderson. And Sarah Henderson came to Tennessee from a small plantation in South Carolina, and she brought with her one of her slaves and her children. And that's actually your ancestor.
What year do you have for that?
We can trace your family back to at least the 1780s.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing.
That would have made your family a really founding family in Tennessee.
Original residents of the state of Tennessee.
Well, most certainly.
And the slave's name is?
All right, the slave is Dinah Bell, and she was owned by Sarah Henderson.
That's amazing.
That's inspiring.
My grandmother's life
and never knew who she was.
She's a relative of ours.
Thank
you very much. Thank you very much.
Our next guest promises not to hold a grudge if we can't find out her connection to one famous feuding family.
We came out to the Genealogy Roadshow today to find out if I am a direct descendant of William Anderson Hatfield, Devil Dance Hatfield.
Theft, violence, romance are all the makings of a blood feud. Add Civil War-era outlaws and a wild frontier to the equation, and we meet the Hatfield and McCoy families.
The Hatfields and McCoys were friends. They lived together in harmony on the Tug Fork, which separated West Virginia and Kentucky. But as it were, the Civil War came along and divided that community right down the middle. The beginning of the feud was sort of like lighting a bonfire, where you light it from 3 or 4 different spots, and all of a sudden you have a big flame. You had a murder at the end of the Civil War where the Hatfields killed Harmon McCoy, who was the brother of Randall McCoy. Later on, Randall McCoy accused Floyd Hatfield of stealing his hogs. But it was in the 1880s where things really heated up.
When Ellison Hatfield, a brother of Devil Anse and a Civil War hero, got into a fight with 3 McCoy brothers, they stabbed Ellison 27 times and shot him. The McCoy brothers were arrested. They were being taken to Pikeville to be tried when Devil Anse came to Kentucky and seized the 3 brothers. The Hatfields held a perfunctory trial. They took the 3 brothers, tied them to pawpaw trees besides the Tug Fork, and executed them with a firing squad.
Indictments were handed down in Kentucky, but the Hatfields were in their hollers in West Virginia. No Kentucky sheriff could go over there and arrest them. It would have been suicide. For 4 or 5 years, there were other acts of small violence and frustration between the 2 families. The Hatfields decided, hey, we need to do something to end this feud right now. They decided that they would raid Randall and Sally McCoy's house and try to kill Randall. They thought if they took him out, they could end the feud. Well, on New Year's Day in 1888, they went there. They ended up burning down Randall's cabin. Randall got away in the confusion, but the Hatfields killed his son, Calvin. They killed his daughter, Alifair, and they beat his wife, Sally, nearly to death.
The whole thing came to a head in 1890 when Ellison Mounce, the illegitimate son of Ellison Hatfield, was tried for the murder of Alifair McCoy. The trial and the public hanging of Ellison Mounce in Pikeville, Kentucky, effectively ended the decades of violence between these 2 families.
Do you have a temper, hold a
Oh,
grudge,
yeah.
anything like that?
She's been known to spark up a little bit.
Oh, okay, okay.
And I
okay.
definitely hold a grudge.
And you definitely hold a grudge.
Doesn't
Okay.
forget.
So here we have this photo of the Hatfield clan.
Mm-hmm.
And so you said you may have a connection to William Anderson or Devil Anse.
Uh-huh.
Well, to make that connection for you, we would look at your second great-grandfather, Farrell Hatfield. So I want to take a look at the 1870 census. Now, to put this all in perspective, a census taker would actually have to go door to door. So could you imagine being that census taker who had to knock on the door of the Hatfield family and say, I'm here to ask questions about your family? That must have been one scared yet also brave census taker.
Very intimidating.
Yes. What you see here is everyone in the household, their ages, race. There's Farrell Hatfield down here at the bottom, right, your second great-grandfather, and he is enumerated with Thomas Hatfield and Sarah Hatfield. And we see the Devil Anse is not enumerated with Farrell, your second great-grandfather. Because the census records don't show the actual relationship, we're gonna take another look at 1860. And there again, we see Thomas Hatfield, Sarah, and Farrell. So we can presume that this is one family unit. We see them in 1860, we see them in 1870. So we have to get this connection between Devil Anse and Farrell. Again, looking at census records, let's find Devil Anse. We can see Anderson Hatfield. Anderson Hatfield is Devil Anse, also known as William Anderson Hatfield. We know that Nancy is his mother, that's been proven, right? So Ephraim is the father. What that means for you is that because we know that Thomas and Sarah were probably the parents of Farrell, and that Ephraim and Nancy were the parents of Devil Anse, to make the connection for you back to the Waring Hatfield family, we're gonna take a look at Valentine Hatfield. He was the father of Ephraim. We know that Valentine left a will. He left money to both Thomas and Ephraim, presumably his sons. It's not the generation that you thought. You need to go back one more generation through Thomas and Ephraim brothers. So you do have your hands full because she is a true Hatfield.
No way.
So now you have that true connection to the Hatfield family, not only just because you can hold a grudge or because of your temper. I want to thank you guys for coming today.
Oh, well, thank you so much. You're welcome.
Are you satisfied? Are you gonna keep digging a little bit more?
I just want to make sure my daughter and my granddaughter know how far back it goes.
It's great to confirm it and to know for sure.
Good. Well, Michael, Janet, thanks for coming on Genealogy Roadshow.
Thank
We
you.
enjoyed it. We really did. Thank you.
Very good.
For our last story, we hope to connect a woman to someone very special to her.
I'm really here because I know nothing about my heritage, especially not knowing my dad at all. Since he passed away already, I'll never be able to know him, but to know at least where my roots come from on his side is a great opportunity to kind of know him indirectly.
All right, Sarah, welcome to the Genealogy Roadshow.
Great, thank you so much. I'm so excited.
So you didn't know your father.
I did not. I really don't know anything about that whole side of the family.
So this is the school tree
Yes,
that you did.
from elementary school.
All right.
I'm right here.
And there's your dad. But other than that, we don't really know what happened.
No.
Okay. Your great-grandfather was a man named Boleslaw Gaszlewski.
Mm-hmm.
That's a mouthful.
That is.
And he was actually born in Poland.
Okay.
He left at a time when the population was increasing, work was very difficult to find. He left just before the First World War, so it's possible he was escaping some tensions.
Okay.
And as a genealogist, when we look for someone's arrival into the United States, we have to use the immigration lists. And as you can imagine, with a name like Boleslaw, Gaszlewski.
How long did it take you to practice that?
Boleslaw, we got it. By a stroke of luck, I found the ship list.
Oh, wow.
The ship was called the Vaterland,
Mm-hmm.
and it arrived a week before the Titanic sunk.
Oh, wow.
So you can imagine what he felt like a week later. Probably glad that he didn't delay his departure for a week. It didn't get on that ship.
Right.
So let's take a look at that record. He is number 20 on the list. It says he's 26 years old. He was married at the time he came over. Now, this was quite common for the husband to go ahead, see if he could find housing and potential employment before sending for his young bride. The ship itself arrived at Ellis Island, the port of entry for 24 million individuals who became Americans. Your great-grandfather started his life in New York City. So this is 1912. New York was not the final destination for a lot of those immigrants. It was already becoming crowded. Jobs were very, very difficult to find.
Okay.
By 1920, your ancestor was going by the first name of Benny.
Much easier.
Much easier to say, and in the town of Hartford, Connecticut. We have the 1940 census of his family. But you'll notice his wife, Bridget, who made it over, she's listed as a widow. Sometime before the census was taken, your great-grandfather, Benny, drowned in the Connecticut River. Now, Benny left behind several children. Catherine is your grandmother.
Okay.
In 1940, Catherine was working as a seamstress for the WPA.
Still in Connecticut?
Still in Connecticut. The WPA was set to help America get back to work after the Great Depression, and it's because of the work of the women in the WPA that continued through for 10, 15 years that they were able to help support things that were occurring as World War II started to break out.
Okay.
So your family has a role in that conflict. Those of us who do genealogy are really jealous of records like this because Poland is a place records didn't survive. There's a lot of conflict. And so finding the place that someone's from in Poland is often a dream. And in your case, the immigration record clearly spells out that your family came from the town of Kolo. Kolo was actually invaded during World War II by the Nazis. And the Jewish members of the town, half of the population, were sent to concentration camps.
Wow.
So the town that your family is from in Poland certainly escaped a lot. And who knows what would have happened to the family being involved in this conflict. So let's pick up the family, right? We were in 1940, and we know that your grandmother was Catherine. We know that Catherine met a man named John Kubik. John was a dancer, and he actually built a dance hall. He was
Really?
a carpenter.
Wow.
After John and Catherine had gotten together, they moved to California. While in California, they gave birth to a baby boy whose name was David. And that's your father.
Wow. Is that Catherine?
We believe that is.
Okay.
Is this the first look you've had?
It is, yeah. I haven't ever seen any photos or anything really to speak of, so.
Here's your father on his second birthday. Now, around the same time period, John and Catherine separated.
Okay.
So this meant that, like you, your father grew up not knowing his father.
Really?
It's something you definitely have in common. Sometime in his 20s, your father took a trip to Hawaii.
Those are some awesome jorts.
That's your father.
Wow.
And about that time, your father met a woman who was there on vacation. You might know the story from here.
Yeah, a little bit.
We do know that David knew your mother was pregnant with you. Now, how does it feel to take a look at your father?
I'm a little bit speechless. Just like never knowing him and then knowing he passed right after I left Hawaii. I lived there too.
You might like this one.
That's amazing. From my time in Hawaii, like I have pictures similar to this with the surfboards.
Looking at your family history, you have a bit more in common with your father.
I 100% feel that. My whole entire life, I've felt this huge void. I just didn't fit in, didn't belong. And the only thing I could ever come up with is that there's this whole other side of me that maybe that's who I am, that's where I fit in, that's where my characteristics come from, my personality comes from.
Now, are you wondering at all how we got these pictures?
Yeah.
We actually were able to find someone who lived in California who had these pictures
Really?
in her possession. Now, her name is Sharon, and she is your cousin. Would you like to meet your cousin?
Yeah, I would love to.
All right, Sharon.
And there's your book.
Hi, are you Sharon? Hi, it's so nice to meet you. Oh my God.
This will show you.
It's all different pictures.
This is just insane. I can't believe I'm actually meeting someone.
It was an adventure for me.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. This means so much. You have no idea.
What you're looking at is a book put together by Sharon's mother, your aunt, so your father's sister.
This is my mom pretty much now.
I don't know where to begin. I'm just speechless right now.
So this is your father at all sorts of ages. Did you think when you came today that you'd end up with pictures and a cousin?
No. I did not know what to expect from this. If nothing more, just kind of have some back history. But no, I never.
I mean, you truly have a global story.
I'm truly speechless. I just can't believe she's here.
Thank you so much for coming and meeting with Sarah.
Oh, it's been fun.
So Sarah, you came here today not knowing anything about your father, not even having cast eyes on a picture. You found out that they were from Poland, they came through Ellis Island, escaped the Titanic by a week, and you ended up with a cousin and photographs that when your daughter is in school and is handed the family tree, give them the book and the documents and she'll get the gold star.
I know.
Thank you so much for coming.
No, thank you. This is just amazing. Him on the beach with the surfboards, like I had those photos of myself. And then seeing him standing there in the same ones, it left me speechless, it really did. We have a lot of catching up to do.
And so we bid adieu to the city of Nashville and its beautiful people. People who brought us portraits of unexpected warmth between the races. A young woman who finds her long-lost father and is reunited with that side of the family. The old feud between the Hatfields and the McCoys, where a descendant of the Hatfields meets a descendant of the McCoys, and they laugh about it. Kind of makes you wonder what she'll bring us next week here on Genealogy Roadshow.